It's the Open Class with Teacher Dan Hurst.
Today we're going to cover quite a bit of territory, quite a few verses. But as I got into this passage, I began to see something that was just so, what the word is that I'm looking for, it was just so intimidating to me. And I began to realize, you know, I told the Lord years and years and years ago that I would never teach out of theory, that I would only teach out of what God was dealing with in my own life. And this is one of those areas that God is at work in my life. So I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm telling you what I'm discovering, what I'm learning. I don't have this down by any means. I am just discovering what God is revealing. And this has been such a great study time for me to discover this. And I'm seeing so much in Jacob's life that I don't like about myself, and seeing so much about how God deals with us and is so patient and kind toward us when we're not what we're supposed to be. How God in His graciousness continues to work in our lives. And that is an example for us, for people who in our lives that aren't what they're supposed to be. We're also to be patient and considerate and let God do His thing in and through their lives to continue. And so none of us have arrived in this area, but we're learning, we're discovering, and I hope that today you'll begin to see some of that. We're introduced here to this deceiver, deceiving the deceiver. Jacob, as we established several weeks ago, was a deceiver. That's kind of what he did. He deceived his brother, he deceived his father. He was just kind of that was kind of his nature. He was just a deceiver. And now he's been sent away to find, or actually to get away from his brother and his father for that matter. And he gets, and the pretense is that he's going to go find a wife. So he does go to find a wife. And he goes to his mother's brother, who's Laban, to spend time with him and also to find a wife. And so we pick up in this passage in Genesis chapter 29. You don't have this particular part on your study guide, but I'm going to have it on the screen. And we're introduced here to Laban's two daughters, to Leah and Rachel. And it's said that Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. And all my life, and even in seminary, it was pretty interesting. You know, we were told, well, weak eyes probably meant that she was nearsighted or cross-eyed or something, you know. And the more I got into this, I began to realize that's not what it says at all. That's such an unfair view of Leah. The word that's used for weak, as in weak eyes, is the word rak, R-A-K. And it is a word that actually means tender or fragile. When Abraham you remember when we were studying about Abraham, he was in the desert, and God and the two angels came to him. He didn't know he thought they were just men coming to visit him. And he went out and he told the servant to find a tender calf. The word that he used there is this R-A-K word, tender, meaning it wasn't weak, it was tender, it was just young. Later, Moses was talking about the children and how the children were having difficulty in the desert and all, and how they needed to be protected. And he uses this word rak, R-A-K, meaning that they were fragile, they were tender. It wasn't that they were weak. It's the wrong. I mean, the word does mean that, but it's the wrong use of that particular word. And the word I is usually in the Bible, the word I refers to a character or a trait. For example, all through Deuteronomy, you'll find the eye of hostility, or the eye of comfort, or you know, this eye of compassion. And there's different ways that it's described. And the idea is that the eye is sort of, you could say, the window to the soul. And so the description of Leah actually means, I think, that she was tender-hearted, that she was compassionate, that she had this was her nature. And the description of her seems to fit better with how she's depicted in the following verses. The issue in this passage is not about her eyesight, but about her desire to please Jacob. And so as we study about Leah, what we see is something about her tender nature. And we begin to see that Leah is very sensitive and compassionate. And Rachel is very beautiful, and then we find out that she's also very kind and very committed to Jacob. So what you have here is that either Leah or Rachel would have been the kind of person that would have been a pleasing and good wife. And that was their desire. They wanted to be good wives. They wanted to be good mothers. And so there was this nature about them. And Leah was the tender-hearted, compassionate one. And Rachel, who was also very kind, but was a little more fiery. She was just a little more aggressive. And so there was these two different characters. And Jacob has fallen in love with Rachel. Now, he's been welcomed into Laban's household. And after a month of being there, Laban realizes that Jacob really is a very, very good worker. He's been working for free. Basically, room and board, and he's working for Laban. That 30 days, that month, has given him time to really get to see Rachel and get to understand Rachel a little bit more and realize that he really does love her. And he wants to spend time with her and wants to spend his life, and that she would make a good wife. And so as Laban and Jacob start talking, Laban says, look, you're a good worker, your family, but you shouldn't work for free. What are your wages? What do you want me to pay you? And as they negotiate, Jacob springs his proposal on Laban. He says, I'd like to have Rachel for my wife. And so the agreement is that Laban says, okay. In fact, Laban basically says, well, might as well give her to you instead of somebody else. And so he says, if you work 7 years, now that 7 years was in exchange for the dowry, essentially. And so he says, if you work 7 years, you can have Rachel as your wife. And Jacob says, deal. I think that's pretty much what he said. And so he works for 7 years for Rachel as his wife. Now for 7 years now, they're courting. 7 years now, Jacob is thinking, someday she's going to be my wife. Someday she's going to be my wife. And for 7 years, they get to know each other. And they discover that they really do enjoy each other and they like each other. That's a long, long courtship. Marcia and I courted for how long, dear, before you asked me to marry you? I think it was 2 weeks or something like that.
No supper today.
So 7 years later now, Jacob comes to Laban. He says, okay, it's been 7 years. And Laban says, God, let's have a party. And he has a party. And 7 years later at the party, at the wedding, Laban deceives the deceiver. And he switches brides. It's a great made-for-TV movie. And what he does now, the wedding is in the evening time. And so the bride has the veil. So Jacob doesn't see that it's Rachel. And so, it's nighttime, and he goes in and he lies with her, and which, by the way, is another reason that tells me that Leah was not a homely woman. He'd spent 7 years with Rachel, so he knew how beautiful Rachel was, and he knew that, as the Bible says, that she was nicely built. And so Leah apparently was similar. And so they're in there. He goes to bed. It's the wedding night, and I love what the passage says. Verse 23 says, "One evening came, he took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and Jacob lay with her." She's had the veil, so he doesn't know who it is. And then verse 25 says, "When morning came, you can read that into that passage. When morning came, there it was Leah. And I can't imagine what Jacob must have thought at that point. What do you say? There seems to have been some mistake. And he goes to Laban, and obviously I'm sure Jacob is pretty mad about this. And he goes because remember, he's been dating Rachel, and they've been planning to get married. Rachel knows that they're going to get married, and so she's also been basically hauled out of the system here. Her dad did that to her. After all, she was planning on getting married, and so she's been wronged also. So he goes to Laban and he says, "Dude, This isn't fair. This isn't right. And so Laban says, well, around here, our tradition is that we marry the older one off first. But I'll tell you what, if you really do want Rachel, work 7 more years. And Jacob says, okay. And then Laban does something which I think is just as odd as this is how strange things got. He says, spend your honeymoon week with Leah, and then as soon as that honeymoon is over with, then you can have Rachel. You don't have to wait 7 years. You can get married right away. And Jacob goes, okay. And so he's in his honeymoon week with Leah. As soon as that week is over with, now he has a honeymoon week with Rachel. It is as bizarre as it gets. And so now he's got 2 wives. One mother-in-law and a father-in-law who is somewhat goofy. And so now that's what he's in. But now I want you to notice something in verse 30, because this was an obvious issue in this very, very strange marriage. In verse 30 it says, Jacob lay with Rachel also, and look at this phrase, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. And he worked for Laban another 7 years. Now this is a critical issue. He loves Leah apparently, because it says he loves Rachel more. It doesn't say that he doesn't love Leah. He loves Leah, but he loves Rachel more. And so now in this very bizarre setup, in this wacky marriage thing that's gone haywire, he's got 2 wives, one that he loves more than the other, and everybody knows it. And in that setting is where we begin to pick up our study today of what I really want to focus in on. Over the next several verses, we see 12 children born. There are actually 13 children born, but one isn't born until much, much later. There are 12 children that are born. And while we could spend a lot of time looking at the conflict and the chaos that happens when your life is focused on self and what I want for myself, hidden in all of this mess are some real gold nuggets. And Jacob's life, as you might imagine, is changed drastically when he gets double married. But we begin to discover something very insightful about what women want. And it's such an amazing revelation, I think, for us to capture what's happening here between Leah and Rachel and Jacob. And we begin to see something about a woman's heart, what a woman really does want in a relationship. And I think it's important for all of us to know this. I think it's important for men to know that this is what your wives are looking for. Wives, it's important for you to know that this is really what kind of drives you. You may not have put words to it before, but this is what it is that kind of drives you. And guys, if you're not married, this is what women are looking for in a relationship, whether it's marriage or just in a friendship or a dating relationship. And for those of you who are, women who are single, this is important that you understand that this is what women are looking for, not only in a relationship with a man, but also in friendship, in a relationship with their girlfriends and their other friends. This is what women want. I love, Brian Egan had a statement earlier. He posted a statement earlier this week, and I didn't ask permission. I told him I was going to steal the line. And Brian says, this is what Brian said: bless those who walk away from you. They're making room for the ones that won't. And I thought, what a great line. It's all about friendships and people that we can trust, people that we surround ourselves with. And Jacob now has 2 wives that he can trust. But they have their needs and their wants and the things that are important to them. And the sooner that Jacob can learn this, the better off he's going to be in his relationship with them. And the better off they're going to be in their relationship with him. And